Today we're talking about developing a mindset for equity in music education. Often people hear what I do and they think, oh, this is a great way to learn how to improve my instruction, or here's a great way to learn curriculum tips to make my curriculum more culturally responsive. And here's a great way I'm going to learn about what kind of diverse repertoire, what culturally responsive repertoire I should be utilizing in my classroom. And sometimes it's surprising to people to know that that's actually the last thing that I support folks on, because what I've learned is that, I can give strategies. I can write curriculum for you. I can guide you, give you strategies on how to create curriculum. In fact, I can give you repertoire choices. But the real work is in making the mindset shifts and the thinking shifts so that when you are actually enacting the instruction, you're creating the lesson plan, you're putting together the concert program, you actually know how to approach those things utilizing the principles. You're not relying upon somebody else to tell you what to do. You're also not relying upon external factors to decide what to choose and what not to choose. What takes more effort, because it's the most difficult part of the work, is really examining yourself. And so as I was starting this work several years ago, what I figured out was that I can't actually start at the curriculum part. I can't start at the instructional strategy part. I have to really start with the shifts necessary so that people are thinking in a different way. Otherwise, when I leave you after the time I'm working with you, you're going to go back to exactly what you were doing before. And remember, I said before, our goal is to shift the landscape of music education. You don't get a shift if your mindset has not changed. So the first step towards making culturally responsive music teaching a norm really requires folks to get into the hard self work so that they are prepared as the leader of instruction in their music program to be able to create the conditions necessary for learning and then create the learning itself. So about this time 2 years ago, well, not quite 2 years ago, I think it was August, or maybe it was September. It was one of the very first professional developments that I led when I went full time in my consulting firm 2 years ago. So it was like a back to school professional development that I was doing for a school district. I'd done many PDs before that. When I was a classroom teacher, I was on the side doing all these trainings and coachings and all these things and speaking. But I remember it was the very first time I did like a heavy equity professional development where I went right on into talking about in music education how bias appears in our policies, practices, and procedures, how inclusion is like very, very heavy. And I remember very distinctly in that session having people it was back to school PDs, so teachers are thinking about getting back into their classrooms, but folks were literally having side conversations and clickety clacking on their keyboard, working on stuff and having their arms clearly not engaging what I was doing. And later when I was reflecting on, well, why did that that did not go the way I was hoping for it to go? What was that? What I realized was I missed a step that beginning the more serious kind of step-by-step work, I had really missed a really important step, meaning that people don't really care about what it is that you're bringing to them until you have made it matter for them. I kind of think of, you got to give people what they want before you can give them what they need. And so just like with teaching kids, right, you have to hook them into the lesson before you can get into the teaching, because if they haven't been engaged, it doesn't really matter what you're doing. And so I realized that I was going deep into all this heavy equity stuff, unconscious bias and cultural proficiency continuum, and working with a school district that had a commitment to investing in their teachers' professional development and their journey and capacity building around equity. I kind of assumed that they were already bought in, that they were already opting in, right? But that was clearly what was not happening, right? And so what I realized was and this was a tweak that I made in the framework pretty early on, is that I can't just jump into the stuff, even when I'm in a situation where I'm working with folks that I know have had cultural proficiency training maybe before. They've had maybe some sort of culturally responsive instructional training before. You have to still, just like with kids, you have to make it relevant to the people first. The other thing that I'd noticed was happening was, when we talk about issues of equity, it becomes very emotionally charged, right? So people have these walls that can go up and they can't receive any of the information, the knowledge, and there's definitely no skill building, and so no sustainability, right? When I was reflecting on that particular PD experience as a facilitator, realizing that two things were missing. One, I hadn't made it matter to them. And two, I hadn't addressed the emotional aspect of it. The first part of really addressing the development of an equity lens comes through helping teachers to understand the symptoms of the equity problem that they are experiencing in their classrooms each and every day, but then also separating that from the bigger root equity issues that are ingrained into our music education, our US education system. What I realized when I started switching that training to really focus that to lower the emotional load first so that people are engaging, but also giving them clear examples of things that are happening in their classroom, because I know what's happening in their classroom. I was a K-12 music teacher for 12 years. I know what's going on in their classrooms, and I work with teachers all over the country. I understand what's going on out there, right? When I changed my approach to start here first, I saw so much better results. People were much more ready to come along with me on the journey, even if they weren't exactly sure what was going to happen. One, because the emotional load of it was gone. When you start with the facts of the symptoms, right? I say the facts are the facts, right? There's no emotional part of it. It just is what it is. That lowers the emotional load and the walls come down. And then when you address the symptoms and separate it from the roots, it helps teachers to see that it's an ingrained part of our system. What I changed in this professional development is that we talk about first the history of music education in the United States, which was never meant to be for all of us. So when we start there and we understand historically how the system was not really created for us and how it has created these systemic issues, it allows teachers to understand separate from their own emotional response that they're having, but they can see like where it came from. And so the first point here I want to make about how we develop this mindset for equity in music education is that we have to help our music teachers, whether you're a music teacher yourself or if you're an instructional leader that supports music educators, we first have to start with understanding the systemic symptoms, but then being able to separate it from the root issues, right? We can't just give people cough medicine all the time and not address the reason why they have a cough. We have to look at the symptoms as well as systemically, what is the root problem that's really happening here?